All right, there we go. I just got the note that the recording is going. Good morning, everyone. Happy late July 22nd. I actually got the date right on the slide today. Thanks to Kim for her normal, wonderful introduction. And thanks to Tony for being here as well. For those of you that have gotten used to seeing Bree Driscoll on our user group meetings, she is on out of the office today. I think taking a well-deserved vacation. So, in any case, it is Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025, and happy to have everyone on board here. And again, as Kim mentioned, for those of you that are joining us live, or have joined us live in the past. Thank you. We did have to do a little reschedule due to some Zoom issues, but appreciate everybody readjusting their schedule or catching up with the video, later on here over the next couple days or weeks as we start to shift into late summer and thinking about school starting again. Our agenda today, we'll move right into it, kind of gone through all the welcome stuff. And again, if you're watching this as a recording, keep in mind we do this live. Kim does kind of a nice setup for us for the first 5 to 10 minutes. So if you get a chance and you have time in your schedule, please do. Be great to have you join us live during the session. Kind of fallen into a pretty standard agenda here over the last couple of buyer user group meetings. We'll talk about our high priority projects and things that we're focused on here at DGS and DPS and on the eVA team. We'll talk about our July release and some things that are coming up. Talk about our August release and some things that are coming up there in August. And then I do have a light demo for you today for a couple items I want to show you. We're going to run into some items a little bit later on, and I haven't even talked to Kim about this, but we may need to do some sort of special demonstration for some of our August items. But we'll touch on those, and then I'll kind of have a chat with Kim and Tony, and we'll kind of decide how to handle that. Some exciting stuff coming as we start to tack into the late summer. That certainly have the would be very beneficial from a demonstration perspective. Kind of our standard slide here that we might have been doing now for getting on to 2 years, our eVA release management slide here. All of our release notes, Tony does a great job of putting those together and keeping those as active as possible out on our website so you can kind of see what's going into each release. And then our tips located at that link as well. Those are buyer tips. They've slowed down a little bit here over the summer, but always handy to go out there and look at those. We also have supplier tips for your supplier community. So, and then all of our training materials and things as well. So always have those links up here in our user group meeting. Shifting out of that, let's dig into some agenda items and start talking about high priority projects. This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone. Invoicing continues and will be for the foreseeable future one of our high priority projects. But we have had a couple things go on in invoicing. And so we do have some new information to share as we are making some adjustments based on feedback that we're hearing from a lot of you out there, agencies that we have been engaged with and kind of doing kickoff meetings and kind of those initial rounds of training and things like that, and some feedback we're starting to hear. And so we are making some adjustments as we are apt to do as we learn more about your business processes and how we can make invoicing as tailored as possible to your needs. So one of the things there, that first bullet point in invoicing is our optical character recognition. That is functionality we're going to use to read emailed invoices that are in PDF or Word format, read those and consume those into the system. We thought we were going to get that done in July. That is not the case. We've had a little bit more work to do on that particular piece of functionality. So we have kicked that out to August. I'm feeling pretty good about August at this point, but stay tuned. We'll continue to communicate with those of you that are involved with invoicing as we continue to get that functionality worked out. So again, optical character recognition, we're thinking August. And when I say August, that's going to be the end of August, kind of that last Thursday, Friday in August. So that is a late August release if we can get that going. A couple other things that we are doing. We took these fields away on our initial implementation, and then we said, "Ooh, we really, from a analytics, workload management, aging, we all know it's very important that when an invoice comes in, and if it is a valid invoice, that it is legitimate, no mistakes, and is certainly something that we, as an agency or as a Commonwealth, should be paying." We've got kind of that 30-day window to make sure things get paid. So we're going to be adding back some fields, payment type more just kind of informational, and then a due date field, basically kind of saying, okay, we get an invoice in, and then when is that invoice due? When's that 30-day clock kicking in? What that helps us with is really analytics, so we can tell the age of invoices, and as they get older and get close to being formally received within that 30-day window, we can do some workload management, some escalations, some things to make sure we're being efficient and moving invoices through the authorization, matching, and approval process. So we felt like bringing those fields back in is really going to help us. More to come on that. Again, this is kind of, you start to open up, this is one of those demo items where we really want to let you guys see that. It's not in UAT yet, but certainly something that's going to be coming potentially in the August timeframe. We also want to do some additional analytics that are really tied to the due date field I'm talking about. We have, kind of fleshing out a first release of an accounts payable invoice dashboard. What are we trying to do there? We're trying to give you some analytics, some oversight. So your, accounts payable, managers, supervisors, leaders, however you want to say, have a little bit of insight. How many invoices are in the system? What's in process? What's moving out? What's coming in? What's getting old? All those sorts of things to help with the oversight of the invoicing processing. And then that last bullet point on this particular slide is our ability to address printing. And we're not talking necessarily about printing to paper. I hope we're not printing to paper, but the concept of printing some of the elements we need maybe into a PDF document, the PO, the receipt, the invoice itself, depending on your needs and how you are then taking those key elements as part of the 3-way match process and loading them into a finance system, loading them into Cardinal, whatever your needs are. I'll tell you guys, I know, not my area of expertise, but the point with this is everybody's doing things a little bit different. There are some really, really, really strict interpretations of what needs to be done. There are some lighter interpretations of what we need to do to meet our business requirements. So we're kind of getting that feedback and trying to address, all the possible needs we can. There's a little, it's not necessarily consistent agency to agency. Doesn't mean anybody is breaking any rules. That is absolutely not happening. There's no, rogue accounts payable processes going on, but you guys do things a lot differently depending on the agency we're chatting with. So again, trying to add in some items around invoicing to help meet all those various business needs and processes we're seeing out in the field. Staying in invoicing, some other things we're going to do, again, as we've heard your feedback, we've got some agencies that are very much like, hey, once we move to this, we don't just want to do PO-based invoices. We want to do all of our invoices. There are also invoices that come in for like service contracts, and there may not be a PO. The service contract's in place. an emergency happens. We see it a lot with interpreter services. You don't use it till you need it. That invoice comes in, and then maybe you're coming in behind and chasing it with the purchase order. But basically, in our workflow for invoicing, the ability for the system to say, do I have a PO? And is this going a certain route? Or is this a non PO? And maybe it needs to go back to the business owner and have some of those elements created around it. Or is it a utility bill that's never going to have a PO associated with it? Dominion Power, they shoot us an invoice. You can pull that into eVA, and accounts payable could just authorize that invoice without a purchase order. So some checks in the workflow to help speed up that process. Also, a change in the workflow where we want to let our agency teams decide, all right, well, who is the first approver? We launched invoicing kind of thinking the first approver was going to be somebody in accounts payable, and that might not always be the case. So we're baking an option into our workflow that maybe that first authorization, the first look, is going back to the requester, going back to the business owner as the first approver, or don't have to do that. You can leave accounts payable as the first approver, and that's a role-based approver in the workflow. So some exciting changes coming there. Now, again, these are things we're planning for. We've got to update our documentation. We got to demonstrate how this works for you guys, and we got to get that out in front of you. So again, these are some changes that are being made, haven't even hit UAT yet, but that will be coming. A lot of this going into August, maybe some things going out into September. So some of these changes coming up here in the not too distant future. One thing I do want to say, well, oh my gosh, Shane, you're talking about all these changes. What if we want to go live next week? No big deal. We are in a condition. We feel invoicing is on in production. We feel like it's a very workable model at this point. Again, we're just packing some additional functionality into the invoicing module to help meet a lot of the different business processes and business needs that we're beginning to see as we talk to you guys. And we knew when we launched invoicing that this would be an evolution. There's nothing wrong with that. So I'm glad we have some flexibility to hopefully address some of these needs. Last thing here on this slide for workflow updates, escalations. And this gets back to adding a due date field in. If let's think of the scenario, an invoice comes in, it goes to a business approver as the first approver. Maybe that's the decision you make at your agency, and it sits for 5 days. There are escalations that are going to kick in to notify the next person. Because again, invoicing incredibly time sensitive, that once we receive an invoice and determine that this looks valid to us, that clock starts ticking. So some escalations being baked in to make sure invoices don't get old and just sit, where a lot of that work now is being done manually. And you're having to do emails, and you're having to maybe do phone calls or Teams chat or whatever it is to get invoices moving and get that three-way match and approval process going. We're going to bake some of that into our workflow. So hopefully introducing an efficiency there for staff as well. So lots of changes going on with invoicing. Again, outside of the OCR stuff, which we're thinking about in August, some of these things are going to shake out over the next couple of weeks. And again, depending on, there could be, your account executive here chatting with, and somebody like myself or Tony, coming in and showing you these new things, or even doing maybe a special user group to kind of demo some of this stuff. So stay tuned for that as we get into August and get into the August and September timeframe there. So lots of fun stuff around invoicing. Staying on that note, let's talk about some other things that are going on and some other high priority projects that we have. External contract number, and I'm gonna have some details about that where I'll kind of talk. This is something that we'd obviously love everybody to load catalogs on all of their contracts. We really want that to happen. We really want for contract shopping that to be done from a punch out from a hosted catalog that really improves your data quality. But we know there's lots of business scenarios where it's either not feasible to get a contract line item loaded, or there's some sort of emergency and things like that. So really improving the usability around a number that's not hosted in the system, and I'll talk about those details here in a bit. I kind of have August, September, October. I don't know that it'll take that many months to get everything in, but certainly we're going to see some stuff in August around external contract numbers. So, and I'll talk about that in detail here in just a little bit. Another one that's coming in, you can do negative or discount line items now in eVA. You can actually, where the dollar amount on a particular line item can be a negative amount, like if you're tracking a rebate or things like that. We know that causes issues for some of our integration agencies that are integrating into their finance system. They actually can't integrate a negative value at the line item level. Well, there's a new function on how you can store some of that rebate information within a particular line item, and it gives you some options. And again, this is just kind of expanding on that functionality and giving you those options. What it also allows, when you kind of tie in invoicing, is your ability to confirm receipt of your rebate, saying, okay, I can now say, I ordered $100 item, I got a $25 rebate, my PO total 75, but then in receiving, you can, validate, yes, I got my $25 rebate. So you can actually receive against that. So some really cool stuff coming in for that. And again, it's looking like an August for us. And again, that's something I want to show you. Our timing was a little off, being scheduled for a July user group, and I've got some fun stuff coming in August. So again, a discussion that Tony and I will have with Kim about how we want to handle that and get the word out to everybody. There's also, I hope not many of you are running into it, but we know it has happened. When you need to do a contract amendment for whatever reason, it does have an impact on change orders, and kind of you have to go in and like refresh the line items. And if you have a line items on your purchase order, it can be very frustrating to do these change orders. We've been working directly at CGI, and our team, and really CGI has been working directly with iValua to get this solutioned. And literally, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes ago, we got news that fix is coming into UAT, and it will go off cycle. That'll go in immediately off cycle when we get that in. So that's moving into UAT today. So we're very excited about that. And thank you for your patience. If you or your end users have been impacted by this, if you're looking at that line and going, I don't even know what Shane's talking about, don't worry about it, because we're going to fix it. But if you or your end users have been impacted by this is something that we will be hopefully resolving very soon. And as soon as we pass this in UAT, which we'll likely get it tested this week, that fix is immediately going in on the emergency path. So you don't even need to wait till the end of July at this point, if we can get that, tested and moving here relatively quickly. So very excited about that. A couple high priority projects there. Staying on that, and I hope you've heard me talk about this, we are doing supplier cleanup. We have a lot of suppliers in our in eVA that they've gone out of business. They're not engaged with eVA anymore. They've either haven't had an order in, eVA's been around for 20 plus years. They haven't had an order in 5+ years. They haven't logged in 5+ years, or they've never gotten an order ever. They registered hoping they'd get business, and they didn't, and then they abandoned the account. So we're doing a little cleanup of that area, but we're doing more than just deactivating suppliers that we think are inactive in eVA. We are doing some changes to our user interface. So that's really those first two bullet points. And it's one of the things I'm going to demo here. We are adding in the doing business as name and or the location name to your supplier dropdown so that you can see not just the company name, but if they have a Roanoke office, Richmond office, Virginia Beach office, Norfolk office, or if they're specific like engineering, marketing, they've put something specific beyond their taxpayer name to help you better determine the location you're doing business with, beyond maybe the address and stuff like that. So I'm going to show you that in just a second. That is in UAT. So that's one thing we're making. And really what we're trying to do here, guys, is help you and your end users select the correct supplier and make that process easier for you when you're creating a requisition, creating a contract, awarding a solicitation, all that fun stuff. So we're trying to improve that process for you. So the first thing we're doing in July, adding in that location information to the dropdown. Again, I'll show you that in just a second. The other thing we're doing is we're removing the deactivated supplier accounts from the supplier dropdown. So we had this brilliant idea when we went live, because one of the things that we struggled with in our legacy environment is you had an end user, they came into eVA, they couldn't find a particular supplier, and then they immediately created a state-entered vendor. Well, maybe that supplier was in a status and, or they didn't find it and they, should have gotten the supplier to re-register, or we do logical deactivations. We don't, fully delete a record. So, you're doing business with a supplier and they asked for their account to be discontinued. And what they needed was really just to reactivate their account, right? Not create a new account, not create another state-entered vendor account. So we had this bright idea that we'd leave all these deactivated statuses in eVA because that would stop the state-entered vendor creation. Well, what it has done is it's just really caused frustration that our supplier list is just full of suppliers that aren't valid and maybe you don't need. So we will be removing deactivated suppliers from the dropdown. That's going to happen in August, but we are still going to allow searching for all suppliers when you hit the see all option. Okay. So we really, make sure, that you can go in and do see all and really see all the supplier accounts that are available to you. Again, trying to avoid just running off and creating a state-entered vendor when we should be getting that supplier to register or reactivate their account. But that's coming in August. And so some additional changes there. We do have a list of suppliers that, are really, we feel like have, for better or worse, abandoned their eVA account and are not doing business with Virginia or certainly not doing business using eVA. We're getting that initial list together. We've gotten a list back from DOA Cardinal from a payment processing perspective to make sure we don't deactivate any suppliers that have pending payments or have had recent payments. We don't want to do that. We're also running this list over to the eVA billing team so they can have a look. Hoping to do some of that work. I have July on here. That might stretch out just a little bit longer as we're working on that list. I've also promised some groups that I'd share that list with them. We have a higher ed team that we meet with. Several in that team have asked to see the supplier list that we're going to deactivate when we have it ready. And I'll be sharing that list with them. But the point is here, we're going to be setting to a deactivated status, probably a large number of suppliers in our register database who just don't do business with us anymore. This first pass, just to clear up any confusion, or if you're nervous that we're going to deactivate a supplier that we're using, if we have any question at all, we're not even going to think about it. We're going to leave the supplier active. Okay. So we're not going in there and just bombing out suppliers. If anybody raises a flag or says, "Ooh, I might need to do business with them," or I have in the past, we're going to remove them from the list. We're going to leave them active. for this first pass. So, and again, we're going to share that list with several audiences as well. And again, if there's any question about a supplier, we're going to leave them in an active status. So no fear there, but I think even with that approach, we're going to be deactivating a fair number of suppliers. And again, just trying to keep our data as up to date as possible. And certainly supplier is one area that we are excited to address. So supplier cleanup. Some additional items as we kind of click in that you might be interested in for our July release. It's coming up kind of towards the end of July. In our reporting area, we're linking the 203, the receiving report, if you've used that report before, to like the electronic, the PO print that gets generated. So you can just write off of your PO, run a receiving report. Kind of a cool feature that we're hoping will be helpful. Just a reminder from a receiving perspective that the data in that report is updated about every 6 hours, because remember, we're reading what we call the data warehouse to run that report. So if you process a receipt and then 5 minutes later run out and run the 203 report, it's not going to be updated, because that data is leaving the application database, or being copied, not leaving, but being copied out of the application database into the data warehouse. So just something to keep in mind from a timing perspective. But again, we hope that's a convenience feature for you guys from an end user perspective. For those of you that use queue management, we're making a fix. The approval flow was absolutely working properly. There are dollar thresholds for those of you that use queue management, where, at certain dollar levels, you can bypass the queue. Even though the workflow itself was working properly, that workflow look ahead feature was not. The look ahead feature looked kind of strange. So a small dollar requisition that, you were looking to actually bypass queue management because, maybe it's $500 or $1,000 or whatever it was. It looked like it was going into the queue. Now it didn't. It processed properly, but we're fixing that look ahead feature so that it's accurate. And then, not sure if you followed along in the last General Assembly session, but there is a new SWAM designation. Military Family Owned Business is the name of the designation. Much like Service Disabled Veteran and some of those other SWAM categories, this will be a new one that you'll see in eVA. And that certification, the process for certification actually began back in July 1st. Again, that's not something eVA does. That is our friends over at SBSD. But it'll probably be another 60 to 90 days, because they've got to go through the whole process of actually certifying these businesses as military family. But it is another SWAM option. And we're going to have a place for that in eVA, and that's going to be there. So that data will be available in July. And so we'll be ready as businesses get military family owned certified. That'll be reflected on their supplier profile in eVA. So that's just some highlights, kind of our high level projects, and then, some highlights for the July release. And then kind of thinking about August, looking forward, talked about some of those invoicing ones I talked about earlier. OCR, getting a due date field on there again to help us with escalations and reporting and making sure we can track the age of our invoices. Right now, that's all looking like August, and those workflow updates I talked about as well. So you have some additional workflow options from an agency perspective, looking like August for that. Those supplier selector changes I mentioned, that kind of last supplier selector change where we're gonna filter out the deactivated suppliers. That's an August release. As mentioned earlier, the rebate discount line items, that at this point looks like an August release. And those external contract number updates. I called it round one. There's some additional things we may want to do. But these round one updates are what is slated for August. And I'm going to talk about those, get into some specifics here because we have some details of actually what we're going to be doing. Shift into that. So that's about 6 different items that we're going to do around external contract number. If you're looking at me going, what is the external contract number? That is a field that is available on a requisition line item. Again, we would prefer, and I think it's a best practice for contracts that your end users are shopping off of, to service those contracts via punch out catalog or a hosted catalog that the supplier provides, right? And the supplier gives that to us. We load that to our contracts, and then that's how our end users shop and add items from contract. They're using those contract catalog line items. But if that's not possible, and we know there's all sorts of business scenarios around that, there is an external contract number field at the line item level. Right now, it is just a free-form standalone field. You key it in, and there's not a lot of functionality around. So here's some additional things we're going to be doing. We're going to add the reference field, and that is on the contract record. There's a reference number field. Some people, eVA generates a contract number, but some organizations have maybe their own internal contract number, and they can put that on the reference field. So you'll be able to more easily see that from the contract view when you're browsing contracts, both on the internal and the supplier and public side, being able to see that reference field. We're going to allow the external contract number field to be copied from line item to line item. Right now, you got to rekey it every time. So now if you enter a line item, you copy that line, the external contract number field will copy, hoping to eliminate data entry errors there. We're going to allow the external contract number field to copy forward from an original order on a change order, or when you're copying, maybe you doing the same order every month and you're copying a PO, and you can copy the PO and that external contract number field will copy as well. So some things to look for and pay attention to, important for your end users to be dialed into that, but some cool things that are happening there. Some additional items that are happening with external contract number. We're going to add the external contract number field to the advanced search option, so users can search by that field on browse requisitions and the browse orders page. So that's going to give you the ability to do an advanced search there if you're using an external contract number, so you can kind of group those POs together and do those searches. POs and recs. External contract number field should be sent on the supplier electronic purchase order. So that is both the electronic purchase order that the supplier gets in their account, and for those more complex suppliers that receive their orders via CXML, making sure that external contract number is on there. And then finally, the contract reference number and the external contract number should populate on the PO print. So when you print to PDF or print to Word, we want to make sure we get that on there as well. So that is really those round 1 items that we're working on. Right now, all those are slated for August. More details to come on that, and hopefully making some good progress from that perspective. So that is all sorts of stuff that's going on, all sorts of changes. Again, some exciting things that really kind of prepping you here in this July meeting. I've mentioned it several times. I think as these things get into UAT and we test them and we get comfortable with them on our side and they begin to come to light, we need to decide how I'm going to get that information back to you. There would be pretty quick demonstrations, but Tony and Kim and I will chat about that. It could be a video we release with just me or Tony or one of our core team leads doing a quick demo, and we release a video, or maybe we do a surprise August user group or something, but we'll talk about that. Big thing is we want to get these things into UAT and have a good look at them, make sure they're performing the way we want them, and then we will move from there as far as getting that information. So again, some cool stuff happening and making some progress here, and excited to see some of these things moving along. Now I want to shift gears. I do have 2 things I want to demo for you. Let me talk about them briefly, and then I'll kind of shift over and we'll do like I said, the demo is kind of light today, but I do want to show you these. Number 1, the supplier selector updates. The Doing business as in location name update is in UAT right now, so we're excited to see that. And then I also have a supplier one I want to show you. As part of everything we went through for our point release upgrade, from a security perspective, when we publicly post our sourcing events, and if we have multiple attachments on there, so let's say you do you post an IFB or even a quick quote, and you have 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe it's a lot of attachments. Some of these solicitations, you're talking 10, 15, 20 attachments, depending on how many rules you have. Our poor public facing users, our poor end users, when they go to VBO and they go to the public posting board and they're looking at a particular solicitation and they want to download the attachments. If they're in that public facing area and they click on a detachment, they got to do a CAPTCHA thing for security. Right? They get that one attachment. Then they go to the second attachment they want. Click it to download it or to view it. They get CAPTCHA again. Then they go to the third one, fourth one. Every time they're hitting to download the individual attachment, they're having to go through the CAPTCHA process. And that's very painful. It's not fun, especially if you have to do like those pictures and some of that awful stuff with CAPTCHA. Now, we have to leave that up because that's a public facing page and it protects us from having hackers and all sorts of angry, ugly people come in and knock our public posting page down, which is not good. So from a security perspective, we need to leave that CAPTCHA on there. But what I do want to show you on the supplier side is a quick way for them to get associated with a solicitation and then pull all the attachments down in a zip file. So they can, if you do 100 attachments, you can click one link and boom, the supplier can get everything off that solicitation in a zip file. So very handy thing if you're doing soliciting and have a lot of attachments and suppliers are complaining this CAPTCHA thing and you had 30 attachments and you're driving me nuts. So I want to show you guys that so you can see it. I know our customer care team is aware of this. So if a supplier calls angry with us to customer care, we're certainly showing them how to do this on the customer care side of the house. But I wanted to show you guys as well here in the bug meeting. So I'm going to stop sharing my presentation, and I'm going to go to pull up my browser here, and here we are. And let me share that. I'll give a second for the screen to refresh. All right, I'm sharing my application.
And while he's getting that queued up, I will share out to everyone in the chat the steps that we created for the suppliers. So if you have a supplier that will then need these steps for downloading all the documents associated with the solicitation, that is something that is in the supplier tips that we've posted.
All right, thanks, Kim. So I am logged in as a supplier right now, and that is absolutely the trick to this. Supplier needs to be registered. Hopefully, and a little sales pitch here. If you have a supplier that is looking over a solicitation and needing to download all of the attachments, in this case, I think I have 4. This is not as bad, but I do have 4 attachments here. And imagine if you've done a solicitation with 15, 20, 30, 40, maybe hundreds of attachments, right? I'm hoping, a supplier who's needing to download and get that type of detail on all your solicitation attachments, they need to be registered. More often than not, a supplier who's that interested in the solicitation is typically registered. All right, if they're not registered, going through registration isn't a big deal. Go ahead and get registered because you're not going to be able to get an award or a PO and all that fun stuff if you're not registered anyway. But what the supplier would do, and I am logged in at this point, so I've found my solicitation. Oh, I want all these documents, but I don't want to have to go through that painful CAPTCHA process. I can hit respond online. And what that's going to do is that's going to drive me back into the solicitation itself and drive me into my account. It's going to drive me into my account. So I am logged in as Charles Dennison of my favorite company. If you've been to any bug meetings, Blue Ridge Fence and Window, all your fencing and window needs in the Shenandoah Valley, contact Blue Ridge Fence and Window. It is family business. Friends and family have run that business for years. So look them up if you're in that area. But all kidding aside, for my little sidebar, they do need to hit participate in the RFX. Now, that's not going to cause a response to get shot in. It does create a draft response, but the supplier is under no obligation to submit or put a bid in if they don't want to. So going through the steps again, find your solicitation, hit respond online. That's going to launch the supplier into the solicitation within their secure logged in eVA account. They can hit participate in the RFX. And then that's going to give them this download all contents of this RFX. So that is going to give them all of this documentation that was associated with the solicitation. You'll notice no proposal has been submitted, so they're under no obligation to submit. But if they do want to download all those files, they simply click this button. And then look at that. It creates a zip file for them that downloads. It loads it, in my case, to a download folder, and it puts all of those files into a zip file for them. So that's all I wanted to show you today from a demo perspective. That just really is a lot better experience, in my opinion, for the supplier than going through and clicking each individual attachment and having to deal with that CAPTCHA security. All right. So then the next thing I wanted to show you, shift out of that. I'm going to head back into UAT here. Oh, shoot. And you're going to have to bear with me. I think it's going to make me go through my full login here. I was hoping it wouldn't do this, but it looks like it is. Yeah, bear with me. I got to get we have a two-factor authentication now that I need to do. All right, there we go. All right, so I am back in in my UAT account on the buying side. And what I wanted to show you guys was the supplier selector updates. So I'm going to browse rec. Should have a rec right at the top here. There we go. Go into this requisition. And, imagine. There it is. And I'm going to just hit that line item that just simply says stuff. And again, this is not in production yet. This is in UAT. It will go into production, assuming it passes its testing here at the end of July. And if I search for Suburban, so notice now Suburban Propane, which even in production has literally hundreds upon hundreds of accounts, it feels like. You'll notice we have pulled in some information about the office. Now, you might have been able to tell, and in this case, what a great example, because probably the ordering or the address we're showing here is the same, but I know this is the Chester location. Withville. Now, again, remember, I'm going to be removing the discontinued accounts in August, but you see Withville, you see DC Metro, you see Cortland, and again, I'll be removing these discontinued accounts. There's Lynchburg, Norton, lots of discontinued accounts too, which you're no longer going to see when I take care of those in August for you. But you get the idea. You get just a little bit more information about the supplier so that it can help you pick and help your end user pick the correct supplier. So that is currently in UAT right now, and that will go in at the end of July. So I think like Friday, August 1st is the first time you'll see this in production. So just a little helpful thing. And again, the end of August, as we go into September, I'm going to remove these discontinued accounts for you. But the cool thing is, if you're like, wow, I thought it was there, I really want to make sure, you can always hit see all. And then we are going to allow you at this level. You can search by all statuses at this level. If you want to search for a discontinued account, you'll still be able to do that. And if an account's discontinued and you're trying to do business with them, you can get that supplier to reactivate that particular account. Okay. So you will still have the option to search for those even when we make that change in August. We're not taking that away. It's just that initial drop down. The initial drop down here is going to have that location doing business as information. Again, being in UAT, not everyone is perfect here, but you get the idea. We're hoping that will be very, very, very helpful for you and your end users. So that is the material that I have today. We're almost right up on time. So I thank everybody for coming. And I didn't know, Kim, if there were any particular questions. I know Tony and Kim have been behind the scenes answering questions. I didn't know if there's anything in particular here in the last 5 minutes you'd like me to attempt to address.
Yes. So there was a couple of questions we were answering behind the scenes. So one of the things that we received a question about was a maximum file size for attachments. And I know that that's within the sourcing QRGs that we have. Do
Yeah, it
you,
is.
it's
It's high.
200. Look, I know Tracy's out there.
I don't know that it's too.
256,
No, I don't know that it's
500 and something. Look, I'm throwing out numbers. Um, and I went to look in the guides, and then it was time for us to actually have a little discussion. So we will get that posted here because I don't have the specific number.
Yeah. It's
Um,
high.
somebody posted 82
Yeah,
megabyte.
well, yeah, it's MB. I think 82. I think it's right in there
Yeah,
somewhere. 80 to 85 megabytes, somewhere in there. And that's per file. It
yeah,
doesn't do like
profile.
totaling. Yeah, it doesn't say, yeah, it doesn't total up. Now remember, I always put this out when I'm talking about this. You've got this balance when you're talking about a system like eVA and any system with file sizes where you degradation of performance. Sometimes it even takes a while for a file of that size to load on our side. Then also consider a supplier. And so you're posting large files for them, and you're just assuming they're going to be able to pull that down. So there is a delicate balance between how big a file and things like that. If the system's restricting that, we're protecting our performance and all sorts of things around that. So keep that in mind. If you have really, 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 really large files, you may need to consider some alternative methods to getting those distributed. Like, putting them on your website, your own website, kind of thing, or a special drive or something like that. So just some things to think about from a file perspective.
And then there was another question that was related to being able to download the responses as a buyer with the solicitation responses. So what we have available is those QRGs. So I'm going to respond to that for you, Melissa, and share that QRG that's related to that sourcing piece of it. And then if you need assistance with it, check out all the QRGs that are available on the public facing website under the buyer training. And it's by the tool. So you have sourcing and you have the different steps associated with the sourcing project. And that specific one is what I just put in the answer. And if it's something different that you need, then please make sure you reach out to eVA customer care or your account executive and let us get you the assistance that you need.
Absolutely.
And she said, thank you. You're welcome. And then there was one more question that we had. So I'm just going to read that real quick. It was just a suggestion related to requisitions. So Terry, thank you for sharing that suggestion, and we'll be sure to look at that and consider it and see how we might be able to implement to help you out better.
Cool.
And someone had a question about data retention in our data warehouse. How much data does eVA software hold, and are there purges done according to retention? So we definitely, I mean, we follow all retention policies, but we have a data
Yeah,
warehouse and
yeah, we store data. The data in the data warehouse is stored for analytical purposes going back to the beginning of eVA. We do have a retention module. We tend to keep, and we haven't hit that mark yet because our platform upgrade, where our data in the application database, outside of a couple things that converted over, really only goes back 3 years at this point, just because we went live in November of 22 is when we went live. So we're a little less than 3 years. It'll be 3 years in November since we've gone live. So typically around the 5 year mark is when you start to purge the application database. And then of course we have data warehouse and retention and everything like that to maintain all of our historical records.
yep.
And
And then there was
I don't know the sizes. It's terabyte upon terabyte upon terabyte of data, I'm sure. So.
And then if you have any specific concerns or need assistance related to invoicing and the use of invoicing for your organization, including how it will impact your suppliers, please reach out to your DPS account executive.
Yep.
They can assist you. Shane did discuss invoicing, the status of where we are with different suggestions and making tweaks to the process that we have already in place in the system and enhancements that are coming, and how the suppliers will be able to take advantage of the OCR optical character recognition feature as we move forward. But that all will need to be turned on. So Monica, I know that you put that question in the chat. So make sure that you reach out and get that assistance. And I think, yeah. Tony also responded to everyone with the same thing. So Tony, I think we were both thinking the same thing at the same time. So, all right. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and wrap up today's buyer user group. As discussed, we might have a special buyer user group being held in August. We'll talk about the best way for us to communicate and or demo some of these things that Shane had already mentioned during today's user group. And maybe we'll do both. Maybe there'll be a video and there'll be a user group.
Yeah, so we got to figure that out.
We will figure it out. Thank you so much again for taking the time out to join us today and for signing up for the new date when we had to reschedule. And we hope to see you maybe in August, if not definitely in September. You guys have a great rest of your day. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.